Hey yo, and welcome to Brawl. My name is Brian, and this Oklahoma school superintendent absolutely smokes this woke CNN reporter for praying a prayer video in his schools. But before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to our great sponsors over at Colonial Metals Group. Even though Trump won the election, you need to protect your wealth with gold and other precious metals, and that's exactly what Colonial Metals Group can do for you. Now, let's dive in.
Your state's attorney general's office says you don't have the authority for this mandate to play that prayer video. So what authority do you have to mandate schools to show your prayer video where you also pray for President-elect Trump?
Look, I've continued to hear the gaslighting from the left, and frankly, even from this network, pushing lies about what's going on across America. President Trump has a clear mandate. He wants prayer back in school. He wants radical leftism out of the classroom, wants our kids to be patriotic, want parents back in charge with school choice. We're enacting upon that agenda here in Oklahoma. That's what our parents want. Every county in Oklahoma voted for President Trump. His agenda is crystal clear, and we're going to enact it in the state of Oklahoma.
I'm not going to take the bait on what you said about gaslighting from this network on this. I'm asking you a specific question. Where is your authority specifically coming from? As you know, thousands of people, including parents who signed a petition to impeach you with more than 14,000 signatures at last check, say this is government overreach and you're taking control away from local parents, local school boards and parents over their kids. What do you say to that, and where is your authority coming from to enforce this prayer video to be played in schools?
You know, I appreciate you pushing that left-wing narrative here, but here's the reality.
It's not a left-wing narrative. I'm literally talking about a petition that parents have signed that's gotten more than 14,000 signatures that have raised this issue.
It's pretty clear on religious liberty. The Constitution's crystal clear on religious liberty. I know the left doesn't want our kids to know anything about the role the Bible played in American history. They don't want any of our kids to know about the Constitution. Our religious liberties are protected, and the left has driven the Bible out of schools, driven prayer out of schools, and everything in education has gotten worse since. Before we had a federal Department of Education and we had the Bible and prayer in school, guess what? We were leading the free world. This was the greatest country in the world, and we have seen every statistic has gotten worse since the creation of the Federal Department of Education and the Supreme Court pulled the Bible and prayer out of schools. President Trump has won on this issue. He has a crystal clear mandate. It's what Americans want. It's what Oklahomans want. And so we're going to deliver on those on President Trump's promises here in Oklahoma.
All right. First of all, the Constitution is not crystal clear on that. It doesn't have God in it. There is this establishment clause in the First Amendment, which the Supreme Court has routinely said it requires the separation of church and state and public schools. There are many cases hold on, I'm speaking. There are many cases where the Supreme Court has routinely ruled on that. You went after woke teachers and the radical left in your announcement for attacking religious liberty, but your critics are saying that by requiring Bibles in every classroom and requiring this prayer video, you're trying to impose your religion on students in violation of the Establishment Clause. They say the Constitution, scholars say the Constitution is crystal clear on freedom of religion, not enforcing one religion, your religion, on students. What do you say?
Look, CNN doesn't have to like it. Left-wing activists don't have to like it.
I'm just talking about facts. It's not my opinion.
Document. The Bible is a historical document. You can't rewrite history, okay? The reality is the Bible was what drove so many of the consequential events in American history. Why'd the Pilgrims come to America? Why in the world did Abraham Lincoln mention God and God's providence in so many of his speeches? How do you explain Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail where he goes through biblical examples if the left continues to censor the Bible from our history classes? Listen, the left doesn't have to like it. They can be offended by it, but we've got to teach history to our young people to make this country great again. President Trump has a clear mandate. Our kids have to understand what made America great in the first place. And obviously the Bible, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence are indispensable in understanding the story of America.
This superintendent is absolutely right on his history. And before I really dive in, because there's actually a lot to unpack here. First off, I didn't like this book at the time when I was reading it in high school. I felt that I was being propagandized too. But when I read it for a second time, The Light and the Glory, the essential premise of this history book is a reminder that the religious principles Particularly the New England Puritan religious principles were the driving force behind our Declaration for Independence. The other driving force was economics, and that was felt by a lot of the representatives out of the Commonwealth of Virginia in the House of Burgesses. So you had these two main factors come in and sort of combine, and you have this religious fervor in the the Northeast, and you had the economic fervor in the South. And that's how our nation was actually able to fuse after our independence. But that's a very brief way to sum up some sort of biblical ties to history. Because again, George III had to admit that if it wasn't for those preachers in New England, they would have won the war. All right, it would have been that simple. Without that religious fervor behind them, there would have been no chance for the Americans to unite and win our war for independence. Hey, y'all. I'm not exactly looking at retirement anytime soon, but my parents are, and friends of my parents are, and I'm sure either you or someone you know is looking at retirement and wondering, what do I do? How do I help prepare for this in this economy with this terrible president and with a vice president who basically coup d'etat'd him and is now looking to run for president herself? How do you protect against this? Well, simple. You go over to my friends at Colonial Metals Group. They quite literally have something called the Retirement Package Plan. This plan backs your wealth with gold and silver accounts. And furthermore, you will have direct access to these accounts. So you're not at the whims of Wall Street. You're not at the whims of inflation. You are in command of your own destiny. As a bonus, qualified applicants can receive up to $10,000 in free silver, plus a couple of other little goodies that they're going to package up for you, and you're going to be able to protect your wealth and your retirement. So go over to this link in the description below at colonialmetalsgroup.com or call this number 800-203-0422 and see how they can help you prepare for retirement today by backing your account with gold and silver. Don't delay your retirement, folks. Protect the money that you earned with Colonial Metals Group. They're here to help. So that's just some basic history right there. And then remember, our law codes do come from two main sources, Mosaic law and Roman law. And now, while Roman law has sort of taken over as the law code, the moral premises of Mosaic law has fused its way inside. So when people say Judeo-Christian, they really mean Judeo-Roman. And again, that's why I love this shirt. You can't see it on camera, but underneath it, it says SBQR. This is the Roman eagle. Yes, I'm a bit of a Romaboo to some degree. So that's the historical basis, and we don't really teach that to kids. If I hadn't gone to a private Christian school, I would have never learned this, and I probably would have believed in the propaganda. So I appreciate the turnaround on this narrative by this Oklahoma superintendent. Now, there is a problem in this video, and before I get into that problem, I got to talk about the reporter. First off, she was rude, ridiculous, pushed back where she did not need to push back. She had that classic line of, "I am speaking," so that automatically disqualifies her in my mind for any future endeavor, because whenever you have to go, "I am speaking," it means that you really have no ability other than moral outrage to get your point across. So no bless your heart for you. CNN, I think you can do better. Let's see. Then she tried to cross him up a couple of times with pushing back of, well, you technically don't have the authority, and she's correct. He doesn't have the authority. Those schools don't have to show his message. Oh, and by the way, 14,000 signatures. I think there were more signatures to bring back The Acolyte, the worst Star Wars Disney production ever made. The second worst Star Wars production, the first being the Star Wars Christmas special. I can say that. You can see the Star Wars stuff up here. So, what's the skin in the game for me? And it's not just the fact that I profess to be Christian. I'm terrible at it. I'm a terrible witness for that religion. But the truths behind it do seem like they have more than just merit to it. They're deeply ingrained into American culture. So I'm very thankful that Oklahoma is pushing back. And to quote Lincoln, turnabout is fair play. When we've had to watch for the past 4 years, arguably the past 12 years, watching the slow march of the institutions with the propaganda that is the 1619 Project, talking about what kind of reparations are owned. And by the way, the people that talk most about reparations often have slave owners in their families. Okay? Funny how it works like that. It's almost as if a whole lot of this history is projection in an attempt to just, tax someone else to pay off someone in the future, which is totally unfair. By the way, if you want to go back to biblical law, the son does not pay for the sins of the father. You'd think that'd be more of a theme, but this is more of a leftist spewing ideology that's trying to push for, again, the 1619 Project, reparations, and all that sort of nonsense. So Oklahoma is standing up to everything, and here's what I think is really going on. On one hand, there is a legal precedent that says what this superintendent is doing is illegal and will probably go to the Supreme Court. However, I see it more as the Scopes monkey trial, or if you've seen the movie Inherit the Wind, which is based off the same thing. The whole premise behind the trial wasn't the fact that this teacher was teaching evolution. It was the fact that they wanted to, that certain people wanted to change the law because they felt that this law was unjust. So yes, they admitted that this man was breaking the law. What they were trying to argue was a case for future appeals and get this law eventually off the books. And I think that's actually what's going on here, because now we have a Supreme Court that actually cares about the actual idea of the Constitution. That is, there's 3 branches of government. There's the executive branch, which does what Congress tells them to do. There's the judicial branch that makes sure that both Congress and the executive branch aren't going over their bounds and overstepping the Constitution. That's the basic checks and balances system that we have. And from a legal perspective, we have gone from a point of the 10th Amendment, where we said that things naturally go back to the states if they're not listed in the Constitution. And then we have the misrepresentation of the 14th Amendment, which was not written well. It was almost written as poorly as the Second Amendment, and has caused as many legal problems today. If I had my way, I would rewrite both of them to have more clear language. But that's why we have a Constitution. We have a process for that. And so what I think is really going on here is the laying of a potential casework that if someone brings a lawsuit against them, they can appeal it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court could possibly say that no, the precedent that we've had in the past was based on bad policy, was based on bad reading of the Constitution. This goes back to the states, and we do not have any jurisdiction here, as by the 10th Amendment. That's what I think the real play is here. But if you have a different theory, let me know down in the comments. I love hearing these kinds of things. I love legal theory myself. That's why I bring up the Constitution so many times and in so many ways. But as a student of the Constitution, I absolutely love what's going on in Oklahoma right now. And once again, to quote Lincoln, turnabout is fair play. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Brawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.